strengthen bonds of solidarity between all people of African descent. It is also based on the belief that unity is vital to the economic, social, and political progress, and aims to unify and uplift people of African descent. Joining us on the show is the former director of Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission and the present director of the Kenya School of Law, Professor Patrick Lumumba. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you on the show.
And
we know you're also here for Liberation.
Yes.
And so we're going to be hearing you speak also sometime this week.
Today.
Oh, today. Oh, very
yes.
good. So we should be seeing you. But I need to ask you, sir, in Pan-Africanism, in moving us forward as a continent, we seem to be somewhat united in the concept of corruption, united in, for example, sports, united in the areas of even religion. But in the area of governance, on how to become a first world, it seems that we've just been totally clueless on how to move Africa forward. In your drive as you attempted to fight anti-corruption in Kenya, what do you think is the way forward for Africa concerning governance and accountability to the people?
Permit me, first of all, to contextualize Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
Pan-Africanism has gone through different epochs. Prior to independence, there was the movement that was led by Africans who had been taken away from the continent of Africa and were in the Caribbean, such as Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica. Those were the days of Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois. Wow. And subsequently, the movements of W.B. Du Bois and his compatriots led to the struggle for independence. And we see at that time Pan-Africanists of the day, individuals, some of whom are never mentioned as frequently as they should, such as South Africa's Pixley Kaisa Kaseme, the founder of the African National Congress in 1911, 1912. As early as 1906, as a student in the United States, he talks about the regeneration of Africa. Then we move forward to the 1940s and 1950s, and we see the Pan-African movement led at that time by Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria, Modibo Keita, Julius Kambarage Nyerere. And at that time, the concept of Pan-Africanism is to help in the fight against decolonization. And that agenda does succeed because we see the unity of purpose amongst all these individuals in the African continent, whether they're of African or Arab descent. That is why you see people like Algeria's Ahmed Ben Bella. You see individuals such as Gamal Abdel Nasser who are pan-Arabists, but also pan-Africanists.
Right.
And in 1957, when Ghana gains our independence, Kwame Nkrumah is very clear that the independence of Ghana means nothing unless the entire African continent is independent. And Nkrumah has the clarity of mind and the enthusiasm that we must move in the right direction and that Africa must unite at that time. When he delivers his speech on the 25th day of May, 1963, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, he urges the leaders to unite so that we have one country, we have one capital. He suggests somewhere in Bangui, in Central African Republic, one army and one currency. But he loses the battle, and we then have OAU. And today, therefore, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, it must be Pan-Africanism redefined. And that is what brings me to answering your question, which I did not want to answer directly, because there must be a context to answering your question.
Okay, good one.
Unfortunately...
Before you answer, let me just invite our viewers. You're going to tweet to us at TVC Connect. Please hashtag YourViewTVC, and we'll read your tweets right here. So we're live on Facebook also. So you can watch us on Facebook, so you don't miss any part of the show. Yes, sir, go ahead.
It's very critical, particularly for this generation, to have that historical context, because there is that tendency for us to see Pan-Africanism as a celebration of art for art's sake. as a celebration of things that make us feel good without making us good.
Right.
But Pan-Africanism must be understood in her proper context.
Okay.
When the stalwarts of independence fought for independence, we promised ourselves a number of things. That we would govern better than the colonialists. That we would give our people the things that they desired. And I'll repeat Kwame Nkrumah's name ad nauseum because he was the chief high priest of Pan-Africanism. He said, "Seek ye first the political kingdom, and the rest will be given unto us." Unfortunately, that did not happen. And he warned us, even in those early days, that the neocolonialists will want to undermine us. And no sooner had independence settled than we started seeing the ugly activities of the colonialists, disrupting those who wanted to lead Africa in the right direction. And I'm suggesting to us that therefore going forward, we must redefine Pan-Africanism.
Right.
Okay, so there's a disconnect though.
Yes.
That the generation that understood the concept of Pan-Africanism are slowly fading away. And the young ones that are major in terms of population have no idea of why they should be bothered about other African countries. Nigeria is populated 70 million below 30. Most of them, when you converse with them, have no idea what you're talking about when you say Pan-Africanism, as much as they should talk of fighting for Pan-Africanism. What are you doing to engage the young people, to see Africa as one, and now fight to let us unite for the glory of bringing us together and developing us economically?
And that is the tragedy of Africa. And Fela Kuti, unfortunately, was singing about these things. When Fela talks about zombies and the zombification, therefore, of the African, what he's simply saying is that young people have been zombified. So what do we celebrate? We celebrate everything but African things. We celebrate music that is played in the United States of America. We celebrate art that is made in the United States of America. In order for us to move in the right direction, Africans, and particularly young ones, must ask themselves, why is it that a continent that is so endowed with natural resources and human resources never realizes our potential? It's because we are divided. And because we are divided, we cannot achieve our potential. Kenya's Ngugi wa Thiong'o, in one of his books, The River Between, says, a house divided against herself cannot stand. What must we do? Some of us are now engaged in a crusade.
Okay.
Because the battle is about minds. We are now moving from every village and every hamlet in Africa, telling our fellow Africans, wake up. Because Nigeria will not survive if Ghana does not. And Ghana will not survive if Liberia does not. And South Africa will not survive if Swaziland does not. The sooner we come to that realization, the quicker we will realize our potential. Otherwise, we'll be running away to the United States of America and dying in the Mediterranean Sea. Otherwise, we'll continue to be humiliated at embassies of Australia and the United Kingdom because we want to go to other people's land while we have a land that we can grow.
Right.
Okay, sir. What's your take about the former Libyan leader, Gaddafi, and his Pan-African agenda in the AU as against neocolonialism? Because, you know, it was portrayed to us as, you know, being against a lot of things, undemocratic.
And a dictator.
And, you know, and he was taken down by the world powers, as we will call them. So what's your take about it? Was it a honest agenda, or was it a personal one, like,
Right,
you know, was portrayed?
You know, Muammar al-Gaddafi may have had many faults, like we all do.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that he was clear about. Muammar al-Gaddafi was clear that Africa will only begin to be a player in world affairs if she speaks with one voice. And that is why for a very long time he was in the forefront of helping African countries, first of all, to gain economic independence. He realized that you cannot make political sense unless you make economic sense. And he wanted Africans to begin to underwrite the costs of the activities. He financed the African Union many times. He helped many African countries many times. He himself, in his own country, wanted to lead by example. He said, I'm going to use the revenue of oil to lift the lives of the people of Libya. Of course, there is never a shortage of men and women who will want to take you out. And the West, of course, were uncomfortable with such an individual. The West said, this man who is telling Africans to have one currency, does he threaten our currencies? This man who is asking Africans to speak with one voice, is he threatening our well-being? Because Europe, a number of European countries thrive on the disunity of Africa.
Right.
And as long as we continue to be disunited, continue to be referred to in terms such as Francophone, Anglophone, Lusophone, you tell me which other
Professor,
continent is referred to.
let me pause you for a second because we have to go on a break. But the ambition of Gaddafi was not known until after
It was taken down.
It was practically taken down.
Yes.
How come the world leaders did not unite, stand with him? We didn't see that
leaders.
as a people, African leaders,
we're
especially.
heading there.
But let's take a break.
Cowards.
Yes.
There is no shortage of cowards who want to preserve their own little turfs. And you'll see it when we come from the break,
Small
even
champions.
with Thomas Sankara,
All right.
the
Let's take
young
a break.
Thomas Sankara.
When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. So, Jumoke, you had a question.
So you have spoken about neocolonialism a lot this morning, and I just wanted to joke that Pan-Africanism for many young Africans is to unite with our Americans of African descent, like Beyonce, my sister. But the truth about it is that to move forward, we Africans need to come together and own Africa. As it is now, political leadership in Africa is about individuals in each state not seeing themselves as where Africans were one, because the United Nations accepted that Africa was done wrong and declared 2015 to 2025 the decade of Africa. No African leader has thought it wise to do anything with these 10 years. Is the civil societies that are bringing people together and saying, oh, they're focused on Africa for the next 10 years. These 10 years will go by without anything happening. You know, we're asking for apology, you know, for what they did to Africa. They're saying, no, we're not the ones who did it. We don't care. What do we need to do as Africans living in Africa to take charge of how the rest of the world see us? Leaving behind the past, you know, what's happened is happened, but going forward and becoming a strong economic force to the extent, like you said, that will now become a strong political force.
Let me make reference to a statement made in 1983 by a famous Nigerian writer, Chinua Achebe. Chinua said, referring to Nigeria, that the problem of Nigeria is simply and squarely a problem of leadership. That can be extended to Africa. The problem of Africa is simply and squarely one of leadership. There are no men and women who have taken it upon themselves to provide the necessary leadership. Throughout the ages, countries and continents have been led by men and women who had clarity of vision. And I'm saying that through media such as the African Union, we should see crusaders, men and women who identify the problems of Africa, the problems of poverty, the problems of youth unemployment, the problems of lack of innovation and invention, the problems of healthcare, the problems of infant mortality, the problems of maternal mortality, the problems of infrastructure, the problems of misuse of natural resources, and the problems of exploitation and the hands of the neocolonialists who are constantly trying to ensure that Africa does not speak with one voice. And what you see, therefore, is that if you come here in West Africa, the former French colonies feel greater affinity to Paris.
Yes.
If you go to the former Portuguese colonies, the Angolans, the Mozambicans, the Guinea-Bissau, the Cape Verde, they feel greater affinity to Lisbon. And the former British colonies feel greater affinity to London, and they have greater fidelity to the Commonwealth than they do to the African Union. I am saying that going forward, we must have men and women, and fortunately, we are beginning to see such men and women.
All right, let me take this call from London. Olalekan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah. What I just want to say is that man there
Professor
is from Kenya.
Yes.
So, is it possible for him to speak to Kenya government and Nigerian president so that if we want to unite Africa, we should be going visa-free? We don't have to take a visa to Kenya. We know South Africa, we don't have to take a visa to South Africa, so that everybody, we can move within each other. That is the only way we can help each other.
All right.
But in terms of visa regime, that cannot help. That cannot unite Africa.
All right.
You see, I commend what he's doing.
Right.
You know, God will continue giving him grace to continue what he's doing. But we need to be visa.
Thank you very much. For this, because I know you are very rich in African history. For the sake of those out there who don't know who Patrice Lumumba of DR Congo and Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, who are people you solely admire, could you tell us exactly what these two people stood for that made you admire them so much?
First of all, and I think that there is a sense in which we must understand history, because this is celebration. Remember that Fela Kuti said, anybody who wants to enslave you forever will make sure that you don't remember your forefathers. And one of the things that we should remember, Patrice Emery Lumumba was the first prime minister of the Congo. He was only 36 when he died. And he was assassinated almost about 9 months after Congo became independent from Belgium. And one of the things that he stood for, remember that on the day of independence, he was not scheduled to speak, but he stood up nevertheless, and in the presence of the Belgian king, he said that he is happy to see that the Congo is independent and that Congolese history will now be written by the Congolese. He was clear that the resources of the Congo will be utilized for the people of the Congo. And he said one thing that we don't repeat often enough. He said that until the day that Congo is settled, Africa will never be settled. And lastly, in his last letter when he was in jail, written to his wife, he had 2 wives, 4 wives, 2 of them called Josephine. And he wrote to Josephine and he said, I have no doubt in my mind that I will not come out of here alive. But my joy that from today henceforth the people of Congo and the people of Africa will be in charge of their affairs. Patrice Emery Lumumba was such.
Okay, let me take the call out from Kano, then I'll come back to you. Ibrahim, are you still there from Kano?
Yeah.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so how is it? At least you girls are doing a very great job here.
Ladies, please. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to commend you for at least getting a wonderful person, Dr.
Yes.
Prof. Lumumba.
Yes.
Please go ahead, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and secondly, please, I want Prof to at least bring, since we are talking about the unity of Africa, and here in Africa, not even maybe Europe or other places, you find out especially the issue of xenophobia here in South Africa. Please, people, they need to talk to the leaders, understand the importance of unity. Understand? Because I see no reason why we Africans, people like South Africa.
All right, thank you. We got the point.
Okay, so 2 issues. The first caller was talking about no visas across Africa and now xenophobia.
In fact, that if he's listened to some of my speeches, one of the things that I've said is that there must be free movement of people across Africa. This idea that when I want to come to Nigeria, I've got to go to the Nigerian embassy to get a visa. When I want to go to South Africa, they ask me about my 3 months bank statements. When I want to go, it's pathetic. And yet, a European who visits an African country is treated with greater respect, so that the African is disrespected in Africa. he or she is disrespected in Europe. It is tragic, and it is gladdening that countries such as Ghana,
Yes.
countries such as Rwanda are now beginning to eliminate the visa regime, and they're also eliminating the requirement for work permits. These are baby steps, and I think that is a good thing that is happening. The second thing is xenophobia.
Yes, sir.
It is tragic that the South Africans don't see and don't remember that the struggle against apartheid was contributed to by all Africans.
All Africans.
And particularly countries such as the frontline states of Zambia, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and Ghana. And going forward, it is the duty of the leaders to remind their people that your long-term health requires that you accommodate and embrace your African brothers and sisters. It is in your best interest.
Sir, I have a question. There's a new move of far rights worldwide, isolation agenda, with the governors and presidents of countries saying, I want myself. America is saying America first from Trump. The UK separated from EU. There is the crisis of Catalonia, crisis of, everybody seems to be pushing the agenda of standing on my own. Do you think this is the right time to go back and revisit the Pan-Africanism when everybody else is saying, let everybody stand and fight for themselves?
Before you answer that question, let me take this call from Yobe State. Are you there? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead,
Yes,
please.
I'm still.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead, please. You're live.
Okay, you're hearing me?
Yes,
I said that my cousin...
Ali, we can hear you clearly. You're live. Go ahead, please.
Okay. My name is Ali Askira from Damaturu.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to emphasize on one aspect. We are talking about Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
Hello?
We can hear you, Ali. We've been waiting for you to finish. Go ahead, please.
Okay. What I'm saying is that we cannot get United States of Africa, but we can get African Union, just like the European Union. Yeah. Because our major problem in Africa is unity within Africa. Right. And sometimes if you look at it very critically, even within a particular country, like I will give an example like Nigeria, we are having problem of even understanding each other, despite that Nigeria celebrated 57 years of independence.
Right. Very true.
An Igbo man is seeing himself as not a Nigerian, a Yoruba man is seeing himself as he's not a Nigerian, a Hausa man is looking at himself as if he's not a Nigerian. So how do we get a United States of Africa or African Union without even having
Nigeria?
Country?
Point taken.
So, isolation agenda.
You know, let me address this issue. What do people want? If you ask anybody, even in your 37 or 36 odd states in Nigeria, if you went you are in the state of Lagos or Akwa Ibom, what do they want? They want food, they want health, they want education, they want the shelter, they want energy, they want to improve the quality of their lives.
So it's the same thing.
What do we want, therefore, is to devolve our systems so that those things are addressed. Has it been done anywhere else in the world? Yes. The country known as Switzerland, which is a very small country, in the 19th century there were wars in Switzerland. Then a war general put them together and told them, you German speakers, you Italian speakers, you Roman speakers, you French speakers, what do we do? Says, let us confederate. Let us create a coordinating weak center and let us devolve the things. And since then, the countries are working well. Go to the Scandinavian countries of Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. People are complaining because the center, particularly in Africa, have used the power for purposes of exploiting people and stealing, in the words of Faima Fanbule of Nigeria, stealing on an industrial scale.
Yes, sir.
As long as we don't liberate our leaders from the cult and culture of greed, we will not realize our potential. And the gentleman from Yobe, I can't agree with you more. We are simply saying that as we look at Africa globally, we must not ignore the little domestic problems. Nationalism that you are talking about, this narrow nationalism is the cries of the people against what they consider to be disadvantages that are being visited upon them on the basis of resources. The day we deal with that As long as people have food, and food means all the good things that make people's lives good, people will not complain.
All right, let me take a quick break. When we come back, we wrap up this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. So let's take some tweets.
Emmanuel Oluwatosin says, African leaders show us that they don't consider Africa their home with their actions and love for other culture. Chibuzo Jonathan says, I respect the professor and I also think education is one of our problems. Segedi says, today's topic is wow, I learned a lot. Thanks to Prof. Yusuf says, Prof, what's your take about NEPAD and also recent invasion of Africa by superpowers in the guise of peacekeeping? The last one, Nita, says, Nigerians will abuse a visa-free regime. Nigeria will be empty.
Let's take 3 more tweets. James Abiodu says, God bless our guests this morning. We have younger ones at top flight of government then. Why is that not allowed now? Adinoye says, this man that fought corruption in Kenya in totality without fear or favor, but the government removed him. And lastly, Mulberry says, are there no bigger platform where Prof. Lumumba can speak? I can listen to him all day. So you can listen to him at Celebration today.
At venue.
The venue is
that is opposite Neca Center. Opposite Shrine.
Yes.
Yes, you're gonna.
So my question is this: you fought corruption in Kenya. The Nigerian government in the last 2 years has been trying very hard to fight corruption, and it seems like corruption is fighting back. How do we fight corruption in Africa? One, and when we say corruption, it's because the African leaders are, they've seen so much poverty. They're all about amassing wealth for themselves. How do we solve that problem in Africa?
First of all, there is the misconception in Africa that organizations such as EFCC can fight corruption. Everybody must be involved in the fight against corruption. Everybody. There must be a culture where people resent corruption.
Okay.
The electorate in Nigeria must resent corruption. Who do we elect into parliament? Who do we elect as governors? Who do we elect as councillors? We as Africans have demonstrated in a number of countries that when we are given the opportunity to elect, we elect thieves. And once we elect thieves, we expect them to behave like angels. In other parts of the world that we admire, they can't and will never elect you if you are a thief. You go to the Scandinavian countries. You go to Brazil now. 3 of their presidents are out of office. You go to South Korea, on a mere mention of involvement in corruption, the president is out.
Yes.
You go to Thailand, their former prime minister has been jailed for 5 years. You tell me here who in Nigeria in high office who has been jailed. One of your former governors was only jailed in the United Kingdom, and when he came here, he was received with pomp and circumstance. One of your ministers now is facing some investigation in the United Kingdom. She wants to come back home because at home
she's safe.
She's safe. So we Africans must make a solemn decision, all of us, that we hate corruption. Otherwise, we condemn corruption not because we hate it, but because we lack the opportunity to be corrupt ourselves. That is what we must do, and the day we do that, and there are few African countries where that is already beginning to happen. President Magufuli is trying in Tanzania. President Kama is trying in Botswana. Here, President Buhari is trying. But it's not easy, and it's not going to be easy, because we succeeded in this country, as in many other countries, to normalize the absurd. And we must denormalize the absurd if Nigeria is to realize our potential. Permit me to say this.
Yes, please.
It saddens me that Nigeria, with the highest concentration of educated men and women in Africa, that Nigeria, which is the 4th largest producer of oil in Africa, still exports crude oil and imports oil. That Nigeria has a GDP of 500 billion United States shillings. Nigeria should be a GDP not less than 5 trillion United States dollars. That is what Nigeria deserves. Nigeria is the country whose change will change Africa.
The mentality of everything African being inferior in the minds of almost every African, to the extent that for us to have investment, we open our doors and invite foreign investment. We do not regulate how they run business. They deplete our environment. We do not regulate all the pollutions. We cannot regulate that. How do we get out of this? It has to be a deliberate move.
Ngugi wa Thiong'o from my country says, decolonize the mind. It's the decolonization of the mind. The mind is the standard of the man. During my own lifetime, I've seen the Chinese move from a backwater, underdeveloped country into the second largest economy in the world. One of the things that amazes me, today you visit every other major university in Africa, there is a Confucius Center to teach Chinese culture. Is there a Nigerian cultural center in London?
Yes.
Is there a Nigerian cultural center in the United Kingdom? Is there a Nigerian? You ladies, for example, I must ask you, why is it that Nigeria should import nearly 25 billion worth of human hair? Hair that has been discarded by Chinese, by Indians?
Gladly we are
Did
not in
not
that
God give us good hair?
Gladly we are not
It
in that
must start from there, however
Yes.
painful it is.
Break it down.
Sir, Professor,
to the little
you've
things
heard
we can do.
a lot of these speeches, and you're right. We need, you're right, 100%. But you see, the mind of the African youth is warped to the point where they can't see past the now.
Materialism.
And you said we need to re-engineer the mind. How do we go about doing that? I know it's one thing to have seminars, it's one thing to try to talk to young people, but the leaders are trying. But it can't be a 360. It's going to take some time. But they also need the people who are following to understand this plan. But no, the average Nigerian, the whalers, don't understand the timing. They're saying, we want change now. What can we do to partner where the government is making an effort, with the people also see our stake, and we're both not just criticizing, but at least we're there to say, you know, we're in this together. It seems as if there's a total disconnect in somebody trying to do something and people, the followers saying, no, I'm cynical, I don't believe in them, I'm skeptical about everything. You don't believe the system. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I hear you. When Fela Kuti is saying, teacher, don't teach me nonsense. How many years was that? And we are celebrating
and we're
him.
Still here now.
At that particular time, you thought that Fela was mad. Today, we are making him a saint. It means that his words are relevant. It is not going to happen. I've always said, and I'll repeat it here, it is in the nature of human change that those who plant the tree of change do not sit under its shade. One generation plants the tree, another generation waters it, another one prunes it, another one enjoys the shade. No instant coffee solutions. People like us and people like you may appear to be voices in the wilderness. But 50 years from today, if we continue this agenda, let me tell you, there will be change.
All right, we have to go. Thank you very much.
If you want more, Necker House celebration.
10 o'clock, 10 a.m.
All right, so, okay. Thank you very much. That's all we can take. These are the tips to avoid from contacting monkeypox. Don't eat bushmeat. Avoid contacts with sick animals. Avoid close contact with infected persons. And please wash your hands regularly as often as possible. We've had a fabulous show with the professor. And as I said, you can meet him later today at Necker House, opposite Shrine in Ikeja here, to get more information on Pan-Africanism. Have a fabulous day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Professor.